on, so I'm all good.
Anybody else need a pen?
How are you, sir?
Okay, I'll bring you one.
You good tonight?
Tell you what, you were actually
You
punctual.
good tonight?
Yeah, I'm good. Mark, do you need a pen?
Sure.
The red dot is on, and we do realize that, huh? We are live.
As soon as we can herd these cats.
You're ready to go?
We are live.
Popcorn and peanuts at the
All right.
intermission.
For the listening public, I will open up this council meeting for December 8th, and then we're going to turn the proceedings over to Twyla to get us through the first phases of this. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
All right. Our first item tonight on the agenda is the inauguration of elected officials. We'll begin with reading the results of balloting as follows. There were 5,294 municipal ballots cast on November 3, and the following candidates were elected into office. For council, Fern La Rochelle with 4,490 votes. For school committee, Ross Cunningham with 4,407 votes. For water commission, Roger Bickford with 4,530 votes. Would Councillor La Rochelle please stand and raise your right hand? Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution,
and will obey the laws
will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Maine,
and of the state of Maine,
that I will,
that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the town of Lisbon,
of the town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office
of the office
of town councillor.
of town
So
council.
help me God.
So help me God.
Do you have an oath right at your desk for you
I
to
do.
sign in? Sign
Okay.
it. And then when you complete your freedom of access training, you can sign the other certificate
Okay.
and file it. Would Ross Cunningham please come to the lectern? And raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Maine,
and of the state of Maine,
that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the town of Lisbon,
of the town of Lisbon,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of school committee member.
of school committee member.
Congratulations, and please sign the certificate.
Thank you.
Roger Bickford was sworn in my office on November the 12th, 2020, and his certificate was placed on file. The next order of business is Order 2020-199 to elect the council chairman. Nominations are open.
I
I'd
will
like to
nominate.
I'd like to nominate Alan Ward.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none? When there are no other nominations, you can vote by raise of hands. All those in favor?
I'm going to abstain from this one.
No opposed and one abstention.
Nice.
So 601. Next order is Order 2020-200 to elect the council vice chairman. Nominations are open.
I nominate Don Fellows.
I'll second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing no further nominations and seeing only one nomination, all those in favor? All those opposed and abstained? One.
Thank
All right.
you, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This point, we'll turn this over to the chairman.
You want to move? Oh, okay, you're all set, right?
No one needs to move.
Yes, I do, but no, we're good, I guess. All right, first item, Twyla. I'm going to have to follow you because unfortunately, whatever I tapped on the keyboard, I lost the agenda that was on the screen. So how do we get there?
I'll help you in a few minutes if you need. Roll call. Councillor Albert.
Here.
Councillor Fellows.
Here?
Councillor Ganong.
Here.
Councillor Colby. Here. Councillor La Rochelle.
Here.
Councillor Lunt.
Here.
And Councillor Ward.
Here.
Next item is good news and recognition.
Anybody got anything that need to be able to share?
Actually, I do, if I could. couple weeks back, had the opportunity to actually have a need to call 911 in our local community, which actually was pretty interesting. So I just wanted to give a big thank you out to our rescue personnel, the police, the fire, and the ambulance. Had the whole service, people servicing our community. Had to show up there for a while, but I think it's actually. I think it's really tough because a lot of times we take things for granted, but the idea that you live in a small community where if you make a phone call, you're going to have everybody show up. Not if, but just matter that they will show up, which is really important. So I know we always come up with that sometimes on budget seasons, but the idea of needing to call and actually knowing everybody's going to show up is actually a pretty good peace of mind that you have at times. So again, thank you all to rescue personnel that actually end up showing up, and everything worked out okay, but it was just one of those things where sometimes you have to go through the routine just to realize how lucky we are to actually have the people we have that serve our community. So thank you all.
Thank you. Anybody else, please?
I just wanted to say that from the Christmas decoration standpoint, the gazebo really looks nice downtown, and the Christmas tree, as usual, depending on how you decorate it, up, down, or sideways. But anyway, it looks really good.
Right on. Right on. Anybody else? Moving right along, Twyla.
Under public hearings, you have one, the automobile graveyard permits for Houston's Auto Salvage and Campbell's Used Auto Parts.
Usually Mr. Campbell's in the audience. Is he here tonight?
He called in earlier, and I offered him the option to watch live, and he said he would be glad to do that.
All right, so everybody wave to Mr. Campbell.
And
I
for those
will.
listening from Town Hall Streams, you're now invited to send written comments by emailing award@lisbonme.org, and Council Ward will review his emails at this time.
Twyla, as of just before the meeting, I had nothing, but I will continue to monitor anything that's there. We'll enter it as we normally would. Just give that opportunity throughout this. If anybody wants to send something to me, feel free, and I will make sure that it actually gets entered into the record. Next item, Twyla.
Is audience participation and response for agenda items. At this time, those in the audience who wish to speak may enter the room, one individual at a time, and address items or issues that are on the agenda.
Is there anybody out there in the wing that I'm not seeing?
No. And those listening from Town Hall Streams are invited to send an email to award@lisbonme.org.
Same thing, Twyla. I still got nothing as of this time.
Okay.
Next.
Is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a counselor requests an item be removed. Any counselor wishing to remove an item? Being none, Order 2020-202 to approve the municipal accounts payable warrants for $743,124.62. The municipal payroll warrants for $145,305.70. The school accounts payable warrants for $855,468.94. The school payroll warrants for $826,002.18. The minutes of November the 10th, 2020, and to approve the automobile graveyard permits for Houston's Auto Salvage and Campbell's Used Auto Parts.
I make the motion to accept.
I need a second.
A second?
I got the first, I got the second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Order passed 7-0. And there'll be licenses here on
Okay.
the table for signing. So if there's no objection, we'd like to do Order 2020-205, Main Electronics Industrial Wastewater Discharge Permit next.
Okay.
Seeing none?
No objection.
Good evening, Steve Avioli, Lisbon Sewer Department. Main Electronics, John Randall Wood Environmental submitted a request to renew the Main Electronics Industrial Wastewater Discharge Permit, which is set to expire December 31st. The only request that they have made is an increase in the daily max flow they can send us, which is 10,000 gallons per day, which is not an issue for us to receive that amount. They typically discharge well under that, and I don't see any issues with renewing the permit as it is written with that increase. And I don't know if you have any questions or need any further information. Excuse me.
Are they here tonight to Are they here tonight at all to?
Yeah, so you have John Rand from Wood Environmental and Rich Fortin of Drumlin Environmental.
Why don't you invite them in? So
John or Rich? I'll hold one at a time. So
put one in this corner, put one in that corner. We'll come on in. They both have a vested interest in this.
One in that corner, if you don't mind.
Which corner do you want?
One on the far end and one right here for Mike.
Here's a microphone.
For the listening dot that's above the podium here, what would the nature of the increase in the discharge actually do for you folks to help with the groundwater?
Greetings, folks. John Rand. I'm a hydrogeologist with Wood Environment and Infrastructure in Portland, and we're working with Drumlin to continue the remediation efforts at Maine Electronics. We felt that we wanted to have the option to have that incremental increase in daily discharge limit. As we move forward with the remediation and we work to optimize the pumping systems that are out there, we don't have any specific plans to increase pumping across the site, but we did think that it would be good to have the flexibility for periods to pump at a higher rate for a day or for several days. And so we wanted that flexibility as we look to optimize the remediation system. And that was why we asked for the increase, and I think it's about, 10% or so, if not even that, from 80 up to 90. So basically to give us more flexibility as we move forward with the remediation efforts out there.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
Just for the town and just for my own, so it's a site that's actually been worked on for quite some time since Maine Electronics. What is like the end game? What is the final goal of this lot? Is this lot eventually going to be used or be availability to be an active lot again, or will this always be a off-limits type lot that will always have some type of project going on where we're pumping and trying to clean? I guess as a community, it's always nice to know what we have and what the idea long term would be.
The goal is absolutely to bring that site to closure, and the work we do at Wood is keenly focused on that. We work on other projects in Maine, Winthrop Superfund site in Winthrop, and other active industrial sites. And we work closely with DEP. We have worked closely with other hydrogeologists that know the best pumping schemes and remediation tools, and we are keenly focused on trying to wind down the remediation out there. There's still some more work to do. The work that's been done to date has been excellent and containing everything on the site, and we've seen some good trends from the work Drumlin's done in improving groundwater quality. Still have a ways to go, for sure. But hopefully with this optimized pumping scheme, we can kind of focus down on the hot spots and bring those to closure in a reasonable time frame. But it certainly is going to be several more years at least, I'd say, and perhaps more. But our goal is to try to wind it down. And there's other technologies that are out there, injecting amendments to kind of lock up some of the contaminants or break them down. Those are tools we're looking at as well as these technologies, like anything, and improve and are more available in the groundwater remediation industry across the country.
Mr. Chair, follow-up question on that. So, on a bigger scheme of things, we actually have the Sabattis River that actually flowed at a fairly high rate at one point in time, and it was actually a lot of water content, so to speak, in the river. And with the dams being taken out, the flow of the river has changed drastically. The banks have come down, and even what you're trying to contain on site still leaches through the ground and gets into the river, I'm sure, because that's just the way water actually travels through the earth, right, in a sense?
Well,
not a lot of it, but I'm sure some. If that river was reduced to the point where it would just become a small stream, with another dam coming out, would that affect, or would that actually put a higher concentrate of would there be any concerns if that river was reduced even smaller than what it is to just a small stream, or actually even some point just be what naturally would have been there without no dams, I guess? Because that's one of the things that actually we addressed this year, and we know down along that river between your site and some of the sites downstreams that as the river goes down, there's more contaminants that sometimes are visible and that come into the river. And I'm just curious what your opinion of that is.
I'll give you a minute and let Rich have a swipe at it as well. But from the work that's been done to date, and as we go forward, we have largely attained containment, hydraulic containment as we call it. The pumping wells, there's 14 of them out there, containing all portions of the two plumes. And so we don't really envision much impact to the river right now, and the geology supports that as well, where the contaminants at the site are deeper, and there's a low permeability clay silt between the deeper aquifer and the river, protecting the river. So I think the current impacts to the river from the site are probably pretty minimal, and we certainly strive to have that continue that way with the remediation effort. Anything you want to add to that, Rich?
Yeah, I would just add that, as John said, under the river is a silty layer, clay layer. Even on the main electronic site, the shallow soils are silty clay, and so studies that have been done in the past have shown that there isn't a lot of hydraulic connection in that section of the river with the underlying aquifer.
Oh, good. So basically, most of your wells that you're pumping were quite deep then, I would assume, by the sounds of things.
The pumping wells, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm just curious because we've seen the river change consistency quite a bit in the last 10 years, 12 years, and there's even talk about actually even changing it more to the point where it's actually would have less water flowing, or less standing water in a sense. So I was just curious if that would affect anything that's happening on site.
To follow that one step further, in the fact that the last message that we delivered to DEP is that the approach that they actually took to remove a dam that was tied up in bankruptcy because of the owners associated with that was not going to be the way they handled the next two dams, that all of the property owners along that property, yours included, would like to hear that input to know what that actually plays out as they consider removing these other existing dams. So hearing what you guys have to offer, I appreciate that, because it's good information from our perspective, because there is a sizable investment along that river for a variety of fronts, and we want to make sure they get heard.
Yep.
I just have a question.
I have here that
I'm sorry.
So my question would be about the remediation process. Main Electronics site has been closed since, I want to say, mid-'80s anyway. And so when you say this, we're still several years out. I'm no expert. That's why I'm asking the questions about this. If we're at a point where you feel that you want to be able to have some flexibility to send more of the drainage away from the site, that would indicate to me that it might be something there that, you'd want. There's a reason for that. But I didn't really hear anything in the response to Councilor Rochelle that made me understand better what that reason was, other than to have some flexibility occasionally a day or two to increase the level in which you're sending things out. And my question would be, why now and why?
I'll give my best shot at that. And again, I think it was really, we don't have a specific plan to turn up the flow rates across the site, as they've been pretty much steady. They did some enhancements in 2016 and 17, but those flow rates didn't increase a large amount from what they were doing before. They just had more locations. And so going forward, we hope to target a handful of the locations that are out there and perhaps turn those wells up, those higher yielding wells that are really capturing the main portions of the contamination. And there could be times or pumping scenarios, high water time of year, let's say, where we wanted to have a higher flow rate that would potentially go above 80,000 GPD that we are currently permitted for, and run that for 2-3 months or something, and then dial back to the average flow rate. I'm going to say the average flow rate has always been well under the permitted number of 80,000 gallons per day. 80,000, I think, is about 55 gallons a minute. And the site on average, help me out, Rich, annual average daily flow rate about 45 or so GPM.
Yeah, the system was designed for 50 gallons a minute, and we, over the years, run, 43, 44, 45 on average. It's just a simple answer to your question is the permit's being renewed, so it's an opportunity to make a change, that's all.
No, and I can.
It's so we wouldn't have to come to you if a reason came up in the 3 years from now, this is a 5-year permit. If there was a reason that came up that said, gee, it would have been nice if we could have had more capacity, this is just a kind of an insurance provision to make the change while we're doing the permit.
Yeah.
We don't have any plans to increase. If anything, we'd like to decrease as we go forward.
Is there a targeted, I know this is sort of a loaded question, is there a targeted end date that we're shooting for? I mean, I know you're working on remediation plans and all dependent on what you get back from soil samples and as you're going along, the things that you need to look at that are benchmarks that DEP, I'm sure, brings up. What does that look like right now? Are we getting regular reports on that? I guess I'm just kind of asking these questions.
We file annual reports with the town that we also file with the DEP, and it's been a long-term trend. We've been at this for 25 years or more. It's hard to predict when we're going to get to the groundwater protection standards that have been established for the site. They're pretty low.
Right.
And typically in groundwater cleanups, as you get closer to that low-end standard, it just takes longer to get to the end because you're trying to get the last 10% of what's there. And so it's just difficult to predict, when, as John said, we'll get to those cleanup standards, and then the site can go back into some kind of development.
Sure. I don't know about the rest of my councilors, but I know that I would be interested in seeing a timeline, what that would look like, where we started, where we're at right now, and if you folks could, would be willing to do something like that, and even if you want to come back in one time and even give us a quick one time, this is where we started, this is where we're at. I know I would appreciate that. I'm not sure if anybody else would be of that mind as well. It just helps to support your earlier inquiry, Councilor Rochelle, about understanding where pieces of property in our community are at. So,
one thing we do have on the agenda for first in part of 2021 is getting with the DEP to talk about the remediation goals, and many of them were set in the 90s or mid-early 2000s, and rules have changed. The DEP's rules have changed for accommodating the fact there might be a portion of the site where no one's drinking the groundwater. It's all comes from Lisbon Water District. The contamination is contained on site with pumping wells. There may well be land uses at some point out in time that could accommodate a business or something, as long as it doesn't dig into the ground or use, pumped groundwater. And so we're going to be pursuing those kind of progressive approaches that DEP has developed, but they certainly take time, because we got to convince DEP that it's safe to do and appropriate to do, and what the restrictions are if we were to go down that path. We had a meeting with them. When was it, Rich? Back, I think in early 2019, talking about a timeline, and I think we for the purpose of that meeting, we were talking about 10 years of running the pump and treat system, and as not that it's going to stop, at year 11, but that was a starting point of a timeline to think about the main electronics site in, and we're it's expensive to pump water and send it to Steve, and we just as soon move in a direction where we can, if it means going faster for a little bit for a couple of these years that are in front of us, and then being able to slow things down, in 3-5 years or so, maybe we can, have some good progress in the course of the next 5 or 10 years.
Well,
Thank
most
you.
everybody has gotten to the subject I want to discuss, but I'm not sure you can answer this. I was just going to ask, when it is complete, what the status of the property will be, what kind of restrictions it still might have, and I think you kind of touched on that a little bit. Depending, as I get it, from when you're able to do something other than just take water off the site or take contaminants off the site. But do you have any more information on that regard?
Only that we're very interested in moving the site in that direction and demonstrating through sampling that portions of the site pose no risk to public health and the environment for a commercial entity of some kind. And the nature of the way those agreements go forward is that it all goes through DEP, and you've got to have restrictions that limit the type of land use or business that might be there. But there are certainly programs to facilitate that at DEP, and we won't be proposing a plan for specific redevelopment, in the course of the next, 5 years or more probably, but we're absolutely focused on trying to move in that direction and get the body of information that shows that, a vast portion of the site would be at some point able to have a certain business on it. It probably wouldn't be residential. It would probably be a commercial industrial use that like it is, like it was.
Is there anything that can be done with the site now?
Sure, I'm sure there is. We haven't focused our energies on trying to identify those yet. We're certainly keenly focused on trying to optimize the remediation. But DEP's come a long way from 2 decades ago, when it was often a contentious relationship. In the last couple years in particular, last 5, 8 years, they've recognized that redeveloping sites is appropriate when enough data is in hand to support it, and as long as it's limited to very specific uses.
Yes, sir.
I guess Don's asking you, would it make a good solar farm area? No.
No, that's where I was going.
I've mentioned that to the team. I do some solar work.
That's an interesting prospect, because that's a 20-year typical operation that doesn't do much disturbing of the soil.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
And just one more question I have is, do you have any equipment off-site from there at all? I mean, I thought years ago there was actually, next to our water treatment up in Moody Road, there was a building there that actually was linked to your site. Is that still active?
There's 2 big carbon filtration tanks that are empty and decommissioned, and so it's not active. It's there and probably will be for some time, but we don't believe we have any conditions that would warrant reactivating it, and it's been offline since when, Rich?
Mid-90s.
And what was the purpose of those? I mean, just so we're aware, because I have asked a question every now and then, and no one really seems to know exactly what the function of the structures were. Was that actually filtering out groundwater for our drinking water to test it for arsenic or other chemicals, or?
That's what it was for, and with the carbon treatment, it was largely for organic, for VOCs. But did it ever really see much duty, Rich, in your recollection? Was it online for a?
Yes, it was online for quite a few years, and it was treating the groundwater that the municipal well, Moody Road well, was capturing before the water got put into the distribution system. It was treated to remove there were some low-level chemicals that were there, and after after a number of years of testing, it was always tested every month, and after a number of years of testing, showing that there was no more, once we put the remediation in on site and cut off migration of chemicals off site, there was no more chemicals getting to the well, and so it was put on standby mode, and eventually, as John said, decommissioned, but the facility is still there if in case it were ever needed. We don't expect it to be ever needed, but it's there probably until the cleanup is done on site.
And is that something the water department now monitors the water quality to actually tell you whether that would be needed or not, or is that something you just work in conjunction with the water department? Or I was just curious how that gets tested now.
I think the water department is still testing the water on a routine basis. I don't know what the frequency is. We don't get that data.
So you don't really have much communication with them, and that would only come back online as if there was found to be a problem, then you would be communicated and actually pulled back in.
Our annual reports go to the water department every year as well as to the town here, and we interact with the superintendent as needed if he has questions or if there's anything that comes up that needs to be
Hey, Don,
addressed.
playing the role of liaison, maybe you could bring that to the water department just to let that marinate and see what their perspective is from Bill, because I know Bill is a very educated man that actually will explain anything, so just get his take. Yes, Mark?
Yep. I had a question actually mostly for Steve, that I know we've had issues in the past with PFAS in our getting into the system, and I know you were going to look into that. I don't know, have you had any luck in finding out where that's coming from? I want to make sure it's not from this site here.
Thank you. We actually are still in basically the research phase of this, and the main electronics facility has done PFAS testing, and their numbers are actually lower than ours. So I would say the chances of the PFAS coming from, we may be seeing trace amounts from that site. I don't think most of our results are coming from them, though.
Okay, so you're still looking for the culprit there, though, but
yes,
it's not likely to be these guys.
Not much has changed at the state level for PFAS that we are hearing about, mainly on the basically the companies that store and distribute like the biosolids, the composting facilities, and the end users. They're the ones that are seeing the biggest change. We're not seeing much of it, and I haven't heard much in the last couple months.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys? Anybody? That said, I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I need a second for that motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Motion passed, 7-0.
Nope. I didn't.
Okay. 6, all those opposed? 6-1, or passed.
Thank you guys for your time tonight.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, while I'm right here, if I can
Yes,
give you a
please.
quick update. Our centrifuge is back operational as of Friday afternoon, so that is running great. Still working out particulars of the end cost for the project, and we're just happy we're back. That's running again. And also, we have an issue with one of our boilers that was installed in 2015 as part of the Siemens energy efficiency projects that happened. There's water leaking inside of the boiler, and which caused there's some sensors that have gone bad that can't be replaced. Patriot Mechanical wanted to replace the boiler. We got Siemens involved, pointing out that they told us in 2014, it could be 1 year, it could be 15 years if there's an issue to call them. We've done that and we haven't heard back yet. They actually sent an engineer to look at the boiler. He pointed out other issues except for the obvious in his report, which he verbally told me about water issues, and they're actually coming from what appears to be the installation of the boiler caused the issues. We're waiting to hear back on that. Just want to make you aware of it.
So and I know it's preliminary in that regard, is you're saying that there's something associated with an incorrect installation?
There's the way it has the combustion air vent piping for the boiler, which is basically the intake and the exhaust for the air, and the piping goes through a sidewall out of the building. It actually goes out at an angle, and water is running back into the boiler, internally into it, and it's caused what appears to be some corrosion issues. We're working that out right now, trying to figure out what we're going to do. But we're looking at a replacement would be about $10,000.
Right.
And right now Siemens is saying it can be repaired, but we're still trying to figure out who's going to do what and who's going to pay for it.
Right, repaired is one thing. If you're not fixing the root cause, then you're still postponing the problem for another 5 years.
Right, and it's
And I know I'm preaching to the choir. You're much more familiar than I am, but that's what I'm hearing and what you're saying too. So.
Yes, and it's a 5-year-old boiler. We shouldn't have issues like
No,
this.
I agree.
Last 20, 25
Agreed,
years.
and I think that's got their attention too. So I'd be curious to hear how this resolves.
Right.
Diane, just keep in contact and present the information when the time comes. Thank you, Steve.
Stay on them, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
You too.
Next, Twyla.
Next item is Order 2020-203, the authorization to solicit bids for the town office generator.
Good evening. My name is Ryan McGee, Chief of the Police for the Police Department. Here to talk to you tonight about the generator that runs the Police Department and also the town office. In front of you, you should have some paperwork, some copies of what we sent through. Basically, I became aware of some issues with the generator within the past year. Before that, I really don't have the history on it. Most recently, when I became the interim chief of police, I realized some of the issues that were going on and started to try to address them. The pretty much starts back in December of last year was the first time that I was made aware of the first issue. That's when the generator wasn't starting. It's supposed to do weekly self-tests. So that's when we started to become aware of some issues going on. Dennis Douglas at that time was the one that we would contact for any building maintenance issues. Moving forward to August of this year, we had an issue. There was a loss. We lost power during a storm on August 4th, and the generator would not start. The problem with that is when the generator doesn't start, we lose all public safety operations. We lose everything. We're not able to communicate with anybody on the road, and we're also not able to use our phones, internet-based phones. We lost everything. So that night we did lose everything. We reached out to ESM, which is a very reputable company that we've been dealing with and is taking care of generators at the high school and also the treatment plant. But the officers on duty have some mechanical skills, and they were able to work on it that night and get it actually running to get the police department and fire department and everything back up and running. So that was August. September, we had another issue. The generator was not starting. ESM was contacted. They came out, diagnosed a charging system issue. Again, on September 11th, they came back to fix the charging system parts. They had a temporary fix in place. And I'm just running you through it so you understand some of the issues that have come about. On October 29th, the generator failed again. ESM was contacted and responded. They learned that a control board was bad, and they also advised me later on that day that the parts are no longer available. They explained that this generator is past its life expectancy. They explained generators of this size usually last 15 to 20 years. This is a generator with mid to early 90s technology. The building was built in 2000-ish. So we're pushing 20 years old that this generator is with parts on it that are from the 90s. So they worked on getting a new computer board. They found one out west. It was basically stock on a shelf. They were able to refix it, but the generator was down for 5 days, which isn't a good thing. And then moving forward to November 12th, the generator failed to start. It was during the day, during a self-test. I went out to check on it because alarms were going off in the comm center. I smelled propane, spoke to the fire chief. We got ESM to come back out. I actually contacted an engineer, Matthew Castanari from ESM. He came out. They located the gas leak in the generator, and they advised they'd try to find a new part for it. So it was down that day. They were able to get back by the afternoon of the next day and fix that issue. Moving ahead to November 19th. Generator started doing its weekly tests, which was a good thing. However, we got a whole bunch of alarms and lights going off in the comm center. Low oil pressure was one of them. So I went out back to shut off the generator. The generator would not shut off, even though there was numerous different lights on. Low oil pressure was one of them. And ESM came out. They determined they believe it was a bad switch. There was some corrosion, which I guess that can happen with any of them. But I guess where we're getting at is generator is at the end of its life expectancy. We're just seeing more and more issues. On the page in front of you, which you don't have because this was something before, it was this past storm. The generator failed to start when we had a power surge. Department went completely black. Power came back on. We obviously got power right back. Generator didn't transfer over and start. And that's really bad for all the servers in the town office and the police department. As you know, being in the council, that servers are very expensive as well. So in speaking to Matt, the recommendation is to replace this generator. And he's given us 3 different options to replace the generator. The first of the 3 options is a 100 kilowatt generator with a 600 amp transfer switch. He explained that it's not the premium option for a transfer switch. However, space requirements, this was an option that we could go with. The second option was a 100 kilowatt generator with a 400 amp transfer switch. And he explained this is an in-phase transfer switch, which means it's a smooth transition of power, which is really important for computers and your servers. So you don't even know there's a transfer of power. Right now when the generator goes on, you definitely know, the lights dim, computers sometimes will even go off. And then the third option is replacing the existing with an 80 kilowatt generator, 400 amp transfer switch. This generator also has the latest touchscreen control interface to be linked to Wi-Fi, remote monitoring, and basically it's got all the bells and whistles with new electronic technology. In talking to Matt, but my concern with that is the more technology you put into something, the more issues you're going to have, from what I've seen short term. And in speaking with Matt, it's a touchscreen panel as well. I mean, think about every time you have to do a Windows update for your computer at home, you're going to have issue every 4, 5, 6 years. And the engineer, Matt Tassinari, said the best option to go with for what we have here at the department would be option number 2. In talking with him and him being the engineer, coming down and looking at this, he also found code violations, which was surprising to hear for me, to hear code violations at the town office / police department for the generator. One issue was there's no way to shut off the power where it comes into the building to a huge control panel. He said there's supposed to be a power master on-off switch. So it goes from the transformer on the pole out front, down, up into the building, into a panel with a whole bunch of different circuits, transfer switches, and so on and so forth. Leaves that and then goes to the main panel in the police department, which there is a on-off switch for that. He explained that you have to have a master off switch where the power comes into the building. So that was an issue as well that they said they could fix. Another issue that they explained was the fact that the generator's inside. That's a risk altogether. They're putting all the generators to go outside now. Carbon dioxide leaking, so on and so forth. So the recommendation is to move it just outside of the building because it's inside the back building with an entrance off the back. So essentially the power lines and the propane and everything goes right to that location, so they're just sliding it forward just outside the building. So tonight, essentially, I'm coming in front of you. I went in front of the Finance Committee, and on the 30th of November, explained all this to the Finance Committee, and the recommendation that I had, also the recommendation from Matt Tassinari. And what the Finance Committee voted and approved on was option number 2, the $62,538. All this being said, this is something that just came to light to me recently and the town manager, as far as, the issues that have been coming this fall. But as far as, we did not know that this is something that was supposed to be replaced 15 to 20 years, and obviously moving forward, this is something that could be planned for and budgeted appropriately. But I feel we're at a point where public safety has to be our top priority. And, God bless you. And a situation where we have a storm like we just had, it's critical that we have the resources at our disposal, and this is something where you can't even get some parts for it now. It's making it difficult to even service. So the generators will be on a service plan in town through ESM, but I can say leading up to this point, just to answer some questions you probably will have. From what I found in looking into this, it looks like a previous public works director had public works working on the generator. Police department really wasn't aware of it because they would come and go. There's a back door into where the generator is located. So they would do the annual service, oil changes, whatever needed to be done. Then that public works director had left, and at the same time, there was several employees, mechanics that worked for public works, had left right about the same time. And then a new public works director came on, and I don't believe previous people shared that with the new director. And then there was a miscommunication because I found it was probably 2017, 2018. There's no sufficient records of it being serviced as far as oil changes and whatnot. So 2019, in speaking with Dennis, those are he got set up. He called ESM and took care of getting them right out here to start servicing it. So moving forward, and I can assure you that we'll definitely be making sure that regular maintenance is being taken care of, and appropriate planning for future replacement would be taken care of as well. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Here, then here.
Yeah, a couple things. One, I mean, it sounds like with all the new generators, I mean, the idea of going to one company that's actually going to service them all so we can get a yearly up-to-date where we're at. And now knowing that they give us a time frame on generators, it'd be nice that we actually put it in the capital plan now, since we know when they're actually getting uploaded. So counselors, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, won't be actually saying, why do we got to spend this type of money today that we didn't know about yesterday? But a couple of things, and just with the whole situation, I was just curious if there's any options. So I know on a lower scale, like on small businesses like ours, we have battery backups for all our servers and stuff, so we don't actually have power surges, and if the power goes out, you still actually have maintain some type of ability to function for some period of time before the generators kick back on. Does the police department have no battery backup for any of the electronics over there at all? So it's a power surge from the generator can affect the service directly. That doesn't really seem appropriate. I'm not a computer guy, but
so
it doesn't seem like that would be right.
All of the computers, and so all the servers, all the computers, all do have the circuit protection, which you're talking about.
But battery backup, I'm not talking to surge protectors, but actually the point where they would still be functioning, running for up to a couple, 3 hours after the power goes out?
Yeah, we have the battery boxes, but it's definitely not 3 hours.
It traditionally depends on what our vendor has signed us up for. So it could be, in some cases, as little as 1 hour battery backup. It's dual function. It does surge protection / battery backup in the event you have a short-term power outage. But it's still not going to protect. It'll do for some small surges. But what I'm hearing from Chief here, and what would be surging out of a generator of that size, and with what I know, I don't care what kind of surge protection you have in there, so no small under desk is going to manage a large surge that comes through. And so equipment definitely would be in peril in that case. But I'll let you take it back over.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because it just seems odd when you actually, because even a new generator can fail, so it just seems, though, especially with the emergency services, that you would think if the power goes out, you still have some level of, hey, look, we got an hour to figure out how to get this going and still have our computer.
You're absolutely right, and I don't know if it's hours or whatnot, but as far as a lot of stuff is internet-based as well, and when the power goes down, nothing's nothing's taking care of that part of it, I guess you could say. As far as the way our computers talk back and forth with the state, or the comm center talks back and forth with the state, and that runs through. And I'm not a computer whiz by any means, but I do know we lose absolutely everything. And as far as backup, like the servers, the computers and whatnot, those all have whatever's recommended for them for backups, which have been replaced, in the last 4 years or so, because Chief Hagan and I had gone through and replaced a lot of those. I believe he got some grant money to replace some of those. But we lose, everything goes dark. I mean, we lose our lights, we lose our radios. The radios aren't on a battery backup because that's so much power. It's going from, it's probably something we might be able to get, but it literally is powering. It's going back and forth talking to the tower on Route 9 back to here. So there's a lot of different things more than just the computer itself. The problem is everything in the comm center, which you've probably seen, is all computerized monitors. And then on those monitors, and I can show you after the meeting, but they actually go back to a computer room. In the computer room, there's computer towers, about 6.5, 7 feet tall. And then each tower probably has 20 radios within that tower. Each one of those radios talk back and forth to the computer in the comm center individually. So it's not just one monitor, but it's a lot more there that's in the back that it powers.
You would just think that it'd be some type of, and maybe, I mean, with the current news that you heard, there's other areas that 911 systems that actually went black too in the state of Maine recently because they just, for power outages and other circumstances. But it would just be curious. I mean, I know we're kind of a standalone dispatch in a sense. I mean, just be interesting to see what type of systems they have. I know even like a small business we have a battery backup for internet. So when the power goes down, we still, if the line's not down, you still get internet. You know what I mean? But again, it's one of those things where it was just listening to it, just seeing. You hate to think that if you just lose power, you just lose everything, and there's no grace period there, I guess. But again, that's my lack of ability to know what actually happens there. And I'm totally on board with the option 2. I think it's a good option. I think the idea of getting something in and going natural gas and being plumbed in and not actually, just having something that's very functional, something that they can maintain and know that we got, know that it's happening and working every week and they monitor it so we don't have to sometimes.
Is that the direction of the next one, to go natural gas?
Yeah.
That's what we're running gas right now on that generator. So it'd be obviously more efficient one.
You said something, I thought, about a diesel leak? Or what was the?
It's a gas leak.
Gas leak?
What's a
natural gas
leak? Is it
leak?
natural
Okay.
or propane?
Natural. Okay.
I'm not sure.
I believe it'd be natural gas. It's plumbed in off 196, so that'd be natural gas.
So we do have natural gas already. For some reason, I was thinking that was propane, but they're actually going to be they're still going to maintain the same natural gas.
Yeah, and those lines go right there.
Yeah,
they'll utilize everything that's right there.
That's fine. It's fine.
Yep.
Am I good?
And the other question I had is just what do they do with the old generator? Is that something that what actually happens with that?
What would you like to happen with that?
I know, it wasn't anywheres in the bid specs.
I'm not a construction guy. I'm a police officer, so whatever you guys say.
I was just curious if there's actually any. Online, you just see tons of generators that actually come out of facilities like this that actually get sold. Secondary market. So I was just curious.
My recommendation, it would be actually dismantled in place and published on Auction International. Let it go, because it will have value for somebody down the line that has a need for it, but it is past our serviceability.
I'm going to go one better. You guys want to take it out to the pit for target practice. I'm sure you get a little bit of satisfaction out of that.
You make a nice
Open it up to the public, whoever wants to come.
It's not as pretty as far as Alan's way with getting a return on it. But.
Right, exactly.
A lot of questions, but I'm on board with it. I mean, definitely the idea of, especially since we use the town as a warming center, I mean, we just need to actually have the ability to not have to worry about that one function. Because typically when those things happen, there's a lot of other things going on at the same time.
There is.
And usually the generators is not the one thing that you want to be worrying about.
So, I don't want to step. Okay, cool. So just to kind of go back to a couple of things I had heard in that as well. All of those things that you had said sound pretty darn terrifying, that they would happen and that we wouldn't have something in place to rectify them. And I don't think it's about finger pointing at all. It's just, it's unfortunate that we had to find out the way we found out. I think we're going to put some plans in place so that we don't have to deal with that anymore. Some of the things I'm hearing that make me kind of want to say, maintenance of the new generator that we get. I think that while it's great that we have folks on our staff who could maintain the previous, I think it's important sometimes to go with the folks who sell us the sell us the service contract if it's reasonable and it makes sense.
Yeah. Have that right in
Oh,
front of
yes, yes. And so, absolutely, I am sure that's something that's great, and we'll definitely want to do that if it makes sense from a financial standpoint. Also, I heard you talking about everything going down, and I think that this is a great opportunity, and I'm sure you're seeing it, to identify critical tools throughout your office, and then, of course, the entire office here, partnering with the town manager to say, what are business critical tools that we need to have, make sure that they're backed up, and then after that, what, if we needed to run for a long period of time, how can we conserve energy, and what are the most critical pieces we need to have running 24/7, 365? Because then that's the way we build those things into place, and then that helps us understand what the life cycle is that the manufacturer suggests, so that we can match our plan around that, so that we're not caught in this type of situation again. I think that's where we all want to be. So that's my 2 cents. Also, the how we're going to pay for it, I think we've all, and I'm going to beat this dead horse because it's what we do. We always preach the capital improvement plan. I think this should have been in there, and I think we all agree on that. But now we know that it needs to be a part of that going forward. It makes it a little bit easier to swallow the idea of having to do this now at the time of a really difficult budget cycle, but I'm sure we'll all talk about that more a little bit. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
I just have a couple comments. One is regarding natural gas. The option 2 says remove the existing generator, fill the electrical conduit with concrete, and cap the natural gas line at the building, and remove the natural gas drop. So there's
That's
your
because
answer.
they're moving it outside the building.
Correct.
Where it should
And then
be.
it says install the natural gas piping from the secondary side of the natural gas meter to the generator. So
Which
that's,
is right next to
so
where
it's
it's
going
going
from
to be.
natural gas to natural gas.
Yep, exactly.
So,
Seen the pipe
but
in
not
there.
inside. The second thing is, I would concur, maintenance contract is probably much better done through a professional that does other generators. I have personal experience with that and done my own maintenance, but boy, the first time you don't do something right, that's recommended, then you void warranties and you do all kinds of things. I think it's worth it. My company actually came and I thought the battery was good. They tested the battery and said, no, it's not. If you buy a new one, we'll guarantee it for the next 4 or 5 years. So locally, you're not going to get that. And the last thing I think is that we could probably point fingers all night long at how this happened, to who didn't do what, when, and so forth. The point is it didn't get done, and I think a maintenance contract would probably fill it. As far as money goes, ideally, I'd like to see us pay it forward or pay it back or something, somehow into the next budget year. Because I really think that $62,000 out of the general fund is, I realize that we should have capital improved it, but I don't know. I somehow, maybe if we can make a short-term payback would be better. Or agree to do a short-term
We
payback.
have funds in unassigned fund balance that could cover this, because we haven't assigned anything yet this year.
Okay.
The unassigned fund balance, and I don't know how long it's going to take to even get it here. It may almost go into the next.
It sounded like he could start working pretty quick.
It did, okay.
Mr. Chair?
I know it took a while
Yes,
for the big generator at the wastewater treatment plant.
Diane, do we have an inventory of all the equipment in the town, various town departments, just so we have some kind of idea of, how old, not just this generator, but, and all kinds of systems that have a finite lifespan that are going to need to be replaced? I'd like to see, a breakdown of that along with our capital improvement plan to see, okay, this generator is going to be, 10 years old, needs to be replaced, and, this phone system is old, needs to be replaced, so we have an idea of, all the systems in all the town departments, and we don't get blindsided by this again.
I can do that.
Okay, that's something I'd like to see. Once you make it, we can keep that updated so that we know.
To roll with that kind of dialogue, I'd offer that there's 2 generators on the agenda tonight, and the fact is both equally piss me off. And the fact is, in that regard, is the fact that I do not figure, and I'll apologize to the chief in advance, because I feel he is in an awkward position where he is our police chief, and he is expected to be able to be doing something for facilities. I don't view this as an emergency. I view it as negligence. because 5 years ago I took the seat here for the first time, and I've been beating the drum about a capital improvement plan that's worth the paper it's printed on, and I feel again here tonight that we are falling flat on delivering that to this community. I believe that vehemently. In that regard, the same thing. We have a public works director that is actually willing to be able to donate us a generator to replace a piece of crap that's 1970s that doesn't work. Why is this stuff never elevating to the point of a capital improvement plan? I thought we were very clear on what that expectation is, and it puts our department heads in a very awkward position to be coming before us to be able to fix something that should be part of the plan. It is a plan. We went through this process, this most recent version of the capital improvement plan, and there was nothing for facilities in it other than the firehouse roof. That's unfortunate. To Mark's point, that is very unfortunate that we're still talking about the same thing 5 years later, and there is no improvement to be able to get us out of this problem. That said, we have what we didn't have before. I very much am in support of everything that the Finance Committee is actually doing, and I applaud their efforts on these types of items. I would ask that they be given a copy of the prior year's budget and the capital improvement plan, and I am very much looking forward to actually getting some input into this process to be expecting in the FY22 budget. Because we have people that are interested in this, they should be getting the tools to be able to make informed decisions. Pardon my tone. I thank you for everything you've done tonight.
No, I agree. I just started doing this. Well, I started doing a lot this past fall, but
Yeah.
you know what? We'll get through it. It's going to be just fine.
You're in the deep end of the
Right.
pool.
Careful what you wish for. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, it's all about outlook, right?
That's
Everything
right.
could be a lot worse today.
And I think the lead time's 8 to 10 weeks, it says here, so.
Yeah, and again,
I'm not talking immediate.
Matt from ESM is awesome. I've worked with him both in Lewiston and in the high school generator project associated with that. You got the right person associated with being able to do this, because what Matt has offered associated with this is the request that's actually on the table is to actually go out for bids. Matt is familiar with this because he will put together or work with you to be able to put together bid specs that don't read like any certain manufacturer's owner's manual, that actually passes that straight face test. And at the end of the day, they will have a very aggressive bid to be able to get the work, because they are a top firm. There are several others in the area that will equally come through associated with that, but you've got the right resource in this recommendation. I trust that very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So my question is, I heard Dawn, and I know it's in there, 8 to 10 weeks, roughly.
Yeah, just underlined as
So
well.
my thoughts here and my suggestion would be on this, rather than continue to roll with old Yellowback here and bringing out the same old folks only to wait for it to fail again. Is it possible that we could rent something suitable to be a stopgap while we're waiting for that to be, that way we know it's going to fire every time. We're going into some critical months coming ahead, and where public safety services are going to need to be there. And
So I did speak to him about that in the situation where if that goes down, it was thousands of dollars. We're not talking short-term money. We're talking big-term money. And it's a situation where, I mean, I have a cell phone number, and this guy is such top-notch. I've called him all hours, and literally all hours, even the night. And he answers and is right on the money, helping me out with whatever's going on with that generator. It is a situation where if this goes down, he could get us a temporary generator right over here to set us up so we can run on temporary if this completely goes down 110%. So right
How about
now,
Lewiston EMA?
excuse me,
How about Lewiston EMA?
EMA.
Lewiston EMA.
Yeah, I can give Angela a call and ask her if it's something that
Yeah,
they
it
have.
might be worth it to actually see what Angela can do for us as well too, because there is a local resources for generators as well, sir.
To rent a generator, you would almost buy in that new one, a good portion of that new one in a month.
so
Every day, it'd be several $100s a day.
don't know what you don't know, and that's why I asked the question. What about Lisa and emergency services as well?
That's I cut to the chase. Go right directly to Angela because
Yeah,
Lisa would be able to get that same call.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, 'cause if we can, bring it from the warming side, the warming center, that might be the angle that we can use to get that to back us up.
Clarify, are you saying as far as renting a generator?
No, the EMA would have one available.
They may
Those
have
that are-
stuff free for us to use, or I should say free. Free's a relative word.
Yep.
But they would have a generator for us to use, especially if we could maybe point to the fact that the warming station is here for all the public, and so that would be one piece of it, and an offshoot of that would allow us to be able to then run the building.
Tomorrow morning, the first thing I'll do is I'll reach out to Angela.
Yeah, no,
They
by all
can just say
means.
is no, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, hey,
Doesn't hurt to ask, right?
for sure.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one thing about the service contract?
Please.
How long, is that long-term or short-term?
Long-term.
So we're signing
It's-
like a 5 or
it's,
10-year agreement, or?
Well, you can choose, and this one's a 5-year annual service, and then it's yearly depending on the generator requires different things a year, so you can do it's year 1, year 2. They spell it out at 5-year intervals.
Similar to what we've seen with the one we have to school, right? I mean, basically it's the same service plan. I guess my biggest concern is something that we've seen earlier. We heard about the boiler where, we actually have a company that comes in and actually sets something up and actually has a yearly program to do something. And then a few years later, there's a different group of people in the house, and actually for a few $100s less, actually the service contract gets swapped to somebody else that's not familiar with the equipment. And then we're stuck with someone pointing fingers at everybody saying it went down because it wasn't, he put in wrong, it's something we just seen playing earlier tonight. I mean, the idea of, one contractor, basically we had an agreement with, and later on it was cheaper to go with a different contractor, and now that contractor's, trying to go back and try to get something fixed. So, I mean, to me, if we actually, and I do understand that we're going out to bid for this at this point in time because of the amount of money, and this person that's actually working with us.
You want to pull the plug. The fact is, it's actually been aired publicly now. The fact is, emergency. The fact is, do we want to? Do you want to enact its discretion to be able to move forward? That is still.
If we have the discretion tonight, I mean, my opinion would be is from what we've seen with the other bid processes, this person actually was not. There was no one out there that was compatible to come up with an adequate comparison for less money, and be able to service it. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I have no problem tonight overriding that or working with the council to actually give the approval to go forward just to get this moving, because we'd be looking at our bid specs as a minimum of what, 2 to 3 week, Alan, as far as
You put this out. The fact is, it's going to probably take you a couple of weeks because I'm seeing in the content here that Matt's given you enough to be able to do it, but it's going to have to sit at least 2 weeks, and it's the worst possible time to actually be receiving bids at the holidays. The fact is, turning the screw would be probably minimum of January time frame for something that we're hoping to have in place by March. That's not putting ESM in a good place either. Not putting anybody in a good place to be able to be addressing it.
Do you want a motion?
If we're done beleaguering the point, I just wanted to point that out, is that there is enough here to be able to bypass that for the motion.
Would you like me to make a motion?
I need the motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we actually award a 62,538 bid, or not a bid, actually a sales agreement for a new generator, 100 kilowatt generator for the town office and police department. With that being said, I would like to actually make part of that motion that we do sign up with at least a 5-year contract with that provider to make sure that it's covered through at least the warranty process of it. And then in 5 years, we can always look at it differently, but I would like to see that the first 5 years be maintained, and so the warranty's covered all the way through.
I'll second.
I have a question.
Please.
Do we need a cost for that maintenance contract in there?
Yeah, I can give it to you right now.
Well, I don't know if that.
Well, I give it's ballpark, but
Ballpark, yeah.
I can.
Or we can go with the upper limit or something.
No, at least you'll hear it for the public record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let you proceed.
and ESM, just for food for thought, I mean, they did install the generator at the high school and also at the sewer treatment plant. And they've done it, from what I've seen recently, they've done a great job as far as answering questions and phone calls and service the best that they can. So as far as the contract, basically first year, $400, 2-year, and that includes a lot. Cleaning generator, vacuuming inside and out, checking dry belts, water jacket heaters, functionality. alternator checks, cleaning air intake, turbocharger, and then taking care of any maintenance report issues, $400. It's about $400 a year contract. The bigger years would be the 5-year service. That's the biggest service where there's several things that they change. It's an $800 service. So it's a good ballpark because the other generators are similar.
I think it's an important factor. There's a 5-year warranty on it, and that 5th year, we just want to make sure that thing is top notch and everything's looked over really well before the warranty actually goes away. So
$4,000 well spent in my book.
I mean, and I'm going to beat the drum 5 years ago. The fact is, I made it publicly known. The fact is, we do a really horrible job of investing in our infrastructure. Again, it's still playing out. We need to change that.
I would say we probably, when this is installed, ought to find out what the expected reasonable lifespan is for this.
Yeah, and 15 years, and
I would think.
What I would actually ask when we get to that point on other assets, where are we in the replacement cost? Because they need to be part of the capital improvement plan.
Right.
Yeah, installed in 2021, let's just say, just if it's a 20-year life cycle, then it's going to be on a CIP to say, and this date, and we're after our maybe the logical place to start understanding where it's at is at the end of the first 5-year service contract. Say, okay, great. So here we are. It's 20 years life cycle. We're 5 years in. Let's start talking about looking at this and talking about putting it on the plan at year 10. Hopefully, if things go well. And then you can start to budget accordingly for it so that the money's in place by the time you get to that year 15. If something goes sideways, you're already prepared for it.
In speaking to that, and speaking to one of their technicians, pretty knowledgeable gentleman, explaining the 15 to 20 years, that has a lot to do with service and maintenance of the unit itself. So that's another reason why, in talking to Matt, as far as having all the touchscreen displays and all the computerized stuff, it just didn't seem like a good option when you're talking 15 years out. So I think we're better off with that option too.
We're going to ask that generator to do a heavy lift here in this building. A lot of things that needs to run. If we get to a point where we need to replace that, and we have another facility that has a smaller lift, so generator that's well maintained for 10 years, and then maybe we want to take on newer, larger pieces, so we need a bigger generator now, upgrade here. We can still take that other one that's been maintained well all this time. Instead of getting 20 years out of it, maybe we can get 25 now, or even 30, because we're going to put it on a smaller facility at a smaller cost. That's the kind of things in a perfect world we're ahead of the game, so we can think like that. It's just, food for thought.
The other thing I would say is, do we definitely now have this under surveillance by the police department on a permanent basis?
Yes.
That's rather than wherever else it might go.
Yep. No, it's literally just outside the building.
No, I mean responsibility of the police department.
Well, as of this fall, I'm in charge of the police department side, the building maintenance side of it.
Okay.
I can show you. I cross my T's and dot my I's. So.
And I'll still say publicly, he's in the business of police and public safety. That's an unfortunate. The fact is, we need a facilities person to be able to address these.
Yeah.
But it's good to be able to rely on people like Matt Testanari from ESM, because this guy is knowledgeable, and I'm not afraid. And I admitted it right when I came up here. I'm not a construction guy, but I can pick up a phone and speak to somebody that is knowledgeable in this field, and that's where we're getting all this information from tonight.
Agreed. Any other questions of the chief on this topic, guys? All in favor?
Order pass, 7-0.
No.
Which one?
I cannot support this. And
okay, so it's...
and then for the reasons that I have cited, and I want them in the official record, is the fact that 5 years ago, we were talking about a budget and a capital improvement plan. I am expecting that it actually change, because I've got 1 year left in this, and I would not like to not go out the way that I came in, talking about the same thing, and the people sitting behind this table are sitting with the same heavy head when these key things keep coming before us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Twyla.
Okay. Order 2020-204, IRP loan payoff.
This sounds like better news.
This is great news. This is one of my favorite parts of the read. I'm not even going to lie.
You see that? You got fans, Kayla. Sell it big.
Good. Thank you. Kayla Tierney, Finance Director. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of a history of the USDA RD IRP program. The town had taken out a loan with USDA RD back in the 90s, and that loan was in the amount of $500,000. And the program itself is to establish an IRP loan program between the town, where the town pays annually to USDA RD for the program, but then the town has small business loans within the town to promote job growth, to help capital for these small businesses, all within this program. The loan has a 1% interest rate and is a 27-year loan that the town pays $21,225 every July 11th. So the maturity on this is July 11th, 2026. So as we sit in FY21, going into calendar year 21, that flip of the calendar coming soon, we're looking out, for the next 5 years. And the balance of this is $122,941.21. USDA has reached out to me. We had discussions. First of all, USDA RD has applauded the town for such a successful program. And they have said that within the program stipulations, they like to see a certain number of loans being dispersed each year. And part of that program also requires the finance department to do reporting with USDA RD. And that's on a semi-annual basis. I send reports twice a year, and then on an annual basis, I send them a budget of what we're expecting to disperse for loans within that next fiscal year, and what the expectation would be for the principal and interest on the loans. The town has had a lot of successful business loans, and typically the interest rate on those loans have been 5%. So that also speaks to the success of this program. In FY20, we had 2 business loans pay off in full. So we had 4 business loans in this program in total in FY20. And we are now left with 1 open IRP loan and 1 open commercial loan that the town holds with small businesses. So there have been no new loans dispersed in FY21. So the topic of discussion for tonight is the payoff of this USDA RD loan program that was started back in the 90s. When we receive money from the businesses, when they pay their monthly principal and interest, that is held in a separate bank account. It's not held within a general checking account. We hold it at Portland Trust in an interest-bearing account. The interest-bearing on top of unrealized and realized gains and losses, depending on the market right now, it's looking okay for market, but for those unrealized and realized gains or losses on the amount of the money in those sub-accounting, the pool sub-accounting of Portland Trust, it's a great area to have the money in, and we're seeing those interests on that. So the balance in that account as of 11/30/2020 is $821,341.90. So to pay off the loan ahead of time, we would use that money in the Portland Trust account. And if we were to pay off in full the $122,941.21, that would leave $698,400.69 in that Portland Trust pooled sub-accounting account, which would still be an interest-bearing account, and all of that money would be retained by the town to maintain business loan programs internally. I believe, based on the success of the program, how I've been going through it and communicating with the businesses still in the program and providing statements to them monthly, that we do have the capacity internally to continue the success of this program. And by paying it off, it would eliminate federal reporting requirements, so we wouldn't be held to that USDA RD expectation of having a certain number of loans dispersed each fiscal year based on the budget that's submitted. we wouldn't have the twice a year reporting on that, because we do report on, job creation too. So we do have all of those historical information, and again, as I noted, to the capacity within the finance department, we can continue doing that for our own statistics to also continue to highlight the success of the program. It would also eliminate audit reporting requirements. So this also was brought to discussion to the Finance Committee on November 30th. And the Finance Committee had some great questions, and they ended up recommending an early payoff of the USDA RD loan. And because they take out the payment every July 11th, that would be the payoff if we were to go ahead with that. And they said that they also would like to see the continuation of the success of this business loan program internally, as it was highlighted in the discussion.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Sure.
I think it's awesome. I think it's a great deal that we actually can pay this off and actually have money still so we can do it within. Two things. I think we need to do it so that way there we're not actually, still paying interest. I mean, 1% is 1%. I mean, it is what it is, but to actually have the local control of what we need to do with that also, I think is important. The second part of that is I think checks and balances are really important. I think the auditing that we did federally was important because they actually wanted to keep our feet to the fire to make sure the money was being used wisely and it wasn't going away. So I think, if possible, can we task the Finance Committee to come up with a set of guidelines so yearly that we actually have a set auditing process we do for that also?
To go with that, well, the question I have, Kayla, is the fact is I am assuming the outside annual audit has a function of assets that this would still be tested to protect that piece, correct?
Yes.
So I think that's already being done, Fern.
Is it being done just
Yes.
by Deno? Or?
Yes, by looking at accounts that are out there in verification of assets, we would get that information through Kayla in the outside audit already.
I guess part of that also, that's important and really good to know that we definitely have and again, I'm not picking on anybody, it's just we had this third party always looking over our shoulder trying to figure out where we're at, what we're doing, and without that, sometimes you kind of, some of the concerns if for audit would be there. But if we are going to continue with the program, and, the question would be is, do we actually still need to meet some of the federal requirements as part of that loan process? Because I know we actually have a loan committee. We actually have a very strong program. I would just feel better if there's another group like the Finance Committee looking at all this and saying, if we separate ourselves from the federal part of it, do we actually have the checks and balances locally to actually make this program work, and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. I mean, this program's changed a lot, right? I mean, back years ago, we just got a settlement just recently from when this program worked years ago where one person could write a check. You know what I mean? We've come a long ways from then, but yet it's always, if we are taking away a part of the checks and balances, I would like to think that we could add in something that'd be equally as well internally. And I'm sure the Finance Committee would have recommendations how to do that. And again, that's just my part. But I think it's a great catch. I think it's good stuff.
Mr. Chair.
Please.
So, echoing all the things that Councilor Rochelle had said already, and then going a couple steps further, I think it's great that we'll take it back in-house. I'm a big fan of that because I think it then gives us that control that we need, and also it takes some of the, this is probably the wrong word, but I'm going to use it anyway, burdens that are required with standardized audits and maybe targets that don't seem realistic as far as you have to do this many amount of loans within. I think it's more beneficial to us as a community, to be able to pay off any sort of monies that we have outstanding. That's first off. Second off, it's great to hear about that account and how, as time has gone on, the program's worked exactly as it was intended, maybe even a little bit better. So to have that kind of economic power, financial ability to help potential businesses here is fantastic, and to be able to continue it under our own guidance is even better. My biggest concern is always, how do we protect it from being raided? Because we're only as good as the council that sits. And I don't mean that any council down the line is going to be bad. I'm just saying that desperate times sometimes call for desperate measures, and people will look at and say, well, that's great, but right now this is the storm that we're living in, and we need to use that money elsewhere. I would be the first one to bang the drum now to say if we're going to do this, it would be short-sighted of us not to put some mechanisms in place to protect that, and at the very least, say there's a reason this is here to encourage growth and encourage new businesses to come here. And if we see that as a slush fund or a rainy day fund or whatever it is, when times are bad, we are shooting ourselves in the foot and we'll be right back where we started again. So that's one piece I wanted to put out there. And then working and partnering with the economic director's office to try to say what it seems like reasonable targets every year. I'm sure there's some goals that get put together, and all of the department heads work together and overlap. And so I'd love to see that sort of partnership be formed as we go into this new budget cycle to say, all right, Brett, hey, what are you thinking about? What's coming down the pipeline, so that I can kind of try to start to put some ideas around numbers that seem realistic, because then data, it turns into great reporting, and that becomes data that everybody feels good about because you can track our success and how we're doing, or maybe areas that we want to put more focus on. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've had conversations with Brett too, because for me, number side, I look at the numbers all the time. He's a people guy, so he has echoed that what we've been working on this program has been successful, and then what he hears out in the community, he's able to relay back to me, so that way I can think about the number side, about X amount of loans to be dispersed in the next fiscal year, or thinking in terms of that way. Would you recommend a policy to be created around?
I think it's definitely worth having some conversation around it. What that looks like, I'm not the one to kind of say. I think that we should be exploring everything out there right now. Yeah. If we're going to take this in-house, then I think that it's important for us to think it through, and the old measure twice, cut once sort of approach here. It's okay to look at everything, but let's just make sure we do the best we can to get the right things in place, so that we're setting ourselves up for success, and those who come to us for those loans, we're setting them up as well.
Yeah, we have such a great relationship with AVCOC as well. So to speak to the loan committee, when an application for a new business loan with the town comes to our desks, we then go to that next step of the loan committee, and then AVCOC is also brought into the loop for that underwriting piece. So we do have those steps, so to say, that we would still follow as part of the parameters that the program was established behind. I think that based on everything that I've seen and everything that we've gone one step further with creating statements with the businesses and all of that, so they're aware of it. It's more of a formalized process that we send out a statement each month in regards to the business loan, and we've gotten great responses from that. The continuity of the program seems it's a great program. It's very successful.
It's encouraging. And last, this isn't so much more talking about the program, it's just to say hats off. In the short time that you've been here, you've made a huge impact, and this is just one more way in which you help us get a better picture of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Kayla, another question.
Yeah.
With Norm's train of thought. We as council are educated in the fact is we can't tie the hands of the council that goes before us, but I need to know the fact that this fund was actually established for new business loans within this community. The fact that I can speak for this group here, the fact is that's what its intention should be in its purest form. Mm-hmm. Could a future council actually change that? Because I'll do my damnedest to actually make sure that I'm tying the hands of anybody that goes after me, because it's not what it's intended for. Can they raid that? We need to find a way to be able to protect that so it is actually intended for what it's there. To Norm's point associated with that, if this is an asset that's actually intended locally that we're going to administer for local business, I'll die on that hill.
Yeah, I think maybe a charter amendment might be the way to isolate it.
And by all means, if that regard is we did whatever we could to be able to protect that. The other part that I heard from Fern's point here, look at the role of the finance committee associated with these things, that they are that educated third party with a financial background to leverage them for these kind of things out there, to have that other set of eyes that it fills in the gap between you and the outside auditors. So wherever that fills in, take discretion, because it's a blank canvas as we open this up to be able to use them for that oversight for sure.
The funds have always been there for us to raid. We just didn't know about it, so we never got into it, right? I mean, it's always been detached away from the federal
Right.
side of it. So I mean, just it was that can that was hid underneath the dresser that no one ever knew, So
This,
the town knew about it, but council didn't know there was a place to raid. So I mean, that's the most important part is you need to actually fix that so it can't be done.
well, I was going to say, I think the transparency hasn't always been, and I don't want this to sound conspiracy theory type, because it's not. The transparency with those types of things, we didn't have that understanding that money was available. We just thought it was, it's a federal program, so therefore it's, you can't touch it.
Yeah,
So
by
that was
all
your
means, it's named as a revolving loan fund for small business. It should stay in its purest form.
So that's exactly when I saw this when I was reading through, I was like, okay, so if we pay it off, we're no longer bound by the Fed. That takes away all the strings attached to it. And I understood that you said this is apples and oranges, and they're not associated with, so this is standalone. To your point, Councilor Rochelle. But that means my first thought was, how do we keep that from going from $698,000 to zero because some bad things happened, and we had to pay for it.
Generators.
Yeah. I just saying, there could be a whole host of really good reasons, but let's not get there. So good.
Any other discussion on this item, guys? I need a motion.
Make the motion.
I'll second that.
I got the second over here, okay? All in favor?
7-0?
Yes.
Order passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Next item, Twyla?
Order 2020-206 to accept the donation of the generator for the Public Works Department.
Come in. There's something you want to add?
If you don't mind, Brian McGee, Chief of Police, I just wanted to come back real quick. I just got off the phone with the Angela Molino, Director of EMA, and she advised that she does not have any generators that we can borrow, but I figured it was important to share that right now. So,
Appreciate that. Thank you for taking
That
the
would be
initiative.
timing on our part, but
Thank
that's
you
all
again.
good. Thank you for checking, Chief. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. Randy Sear, Public Works and Solid Waste Director. I'm coming with you tonight. Of course, tonight's the night of generators, but mine's on a lighter note.
Yes, it is.
I have a generator that I've owned for quite a few years. Well, not quite a few years, probably about 4 or 5 years. It used to come from Hannaford up in Bangor, and it used to be their backup power to their freezer units. They upgraded. This generator only has 388 hours on it, and it self-cycles and it does its own thing. I'm probably going to be listing my house in about another month, so I'm not even going to bother putting it into my house where I was going to put it. So my thing is I'd donate it to the town. Again, Matt Tazzaneri is going to come over. He's going to see what we have, because what we have is very old. And if it all works out, I'd like to give it to the town. It runs off natural gas. We have natural gas running right behind where the generator is now at the Public Works. So if it's a good fit, I'd like to just offer it to the town if anybody's interested. It has its own transfer switch. It ran really well. My cousin, which works for an electrical outfit up in Bangor, he did all the disconnect and everything, and he said it ran fine. They maintain Hannaford. And they said other than them upgrading to big Caterpillar units that power the whole store, that he said there was nothing wrong with that unit. So I'm going to let Matt be the judge if it's a suitable generator and it'll work. You guys are more than happy to take it if you want it.
Before he changes his mind, I need a motion.
Make a motion. I'll make the motion.
I'll make a second for discussion.
Yep, I got the second here, and I had the first. Go ahead.
Definitely very nicely, Randy. We appreciate that very much. Since that one there is probably should have been on the capital plan, 30 years ago? That's an old one there, right? At the Public Works.
And to add to the capital plan, now this year we're all starting to take care of our own buildings. So I think in this new FY, fiscal year 22, you're going to see a lot more things being added on as far as capital improvement plans. That wasn't something that was, part of our, I deal with the equipment, the trucks and all that other good stuff, but now that I have the transfer station and other things, those are going to be built in.
And my point going with that was not to beat anybody up, was more the idea that, it's not a new unit, it's a unit that's much better than what we have, but even if this gets put in place, I think it still would be important to actually put this on to the,
Right.
It's not a new unit, so it's actually going to need some upgrading at some point in time. And if they do install it, to have them give us an idea of where we are. Are we 5 years out, 10 years out from actually replacing it? So, it buys us some time without a doubt, and it's actually at a very good cost savings.
Right.
But, what's the next step? So we just don't take this for granted that we get a new one in there, and then actually just 5 years from now or 10 years from now we'll be in a circumstance. That's all.
Yeah, it's not new by any means, but it's a lot newer than what I have.
Absolutely.
And it's, like I said, it's got a meter on it. It's only 388 hours on it, so
Which isn't nothing. Yeah.
really nothing.
Your cousin know of any larger Hannaford supercenters, maybe a bigger generator?
I know, right? Rolling them out, yeah, exactly. But the fact that it runs on natural gas or propane, I believe right now it's set up as natural gas. So, it's a good fit for where it's at. I could have converted it over, but it's just, I'm trying to downsize from my house, so
Good
I'm not
luck.
going to need a big old generator
Like too many things. Good luck.
yeah.
It's good. Sounds like the house, the garage is staying the same
Yeah.
size.
Well, no, I'm going to build a bigger garage, but have a smaller living space.
Can I have
Please.
Priorities.
Randy, do we actually have funds available to actually get this set up? It doesn't, even though we get generated for free, it's still
It,
going to actually
it
need to
really
be
won't
set
take
up.
a whole lot to set it up. Like Matt says, as long as everything's compatible, it'd be just yanking one out, putting the other one in. This one actually has a transfer switch
That's
where
it,
the other one doesn't.
right?
We have to go actually flip it, then go outside with starting fluid and a jumper pack and try to get it going and caress it a little bit and
Say nice things to it, yeah.
yeah, and pray and
But even the
Spraying
idea of
starter
putting,
fluid into the carburetor, I'm having flashbacks.
yeah.
1982.
you can actually spend a couple $1,000 getting an electrician in there to hook up a transfer. For the rewiring of a new generator to actually have it so automatically switches over and
Right.
And I'm not sure what the internals of the Public Works where that needs to be hooked up into the fuse panel looks like and stuff. So it would just be nice maybe to actually get an idea and find out what you have for funds available for
Well, that's
that.
why Matt's going to come over, and I actually took it from my garage. I was swapping out I let the town use my auger, so I was swapping it out at my house. So I took the forks, and with the Bobcat, I loaded my generator on the trailer and brought it over to the Public Works garage. So Matt can he's got the serial numbers, he's got everything right there, the transfer switch, and it's a Cummins, it's a Cummins motor, so it's, it's a 4-cylinder, it's a pretty big rig.
Nice.
So,
Wow.
Any other questions?
yeah.
Any other questions of the director?
No,
All in
one-
favor?
Oh.
Quick, before he changes his mind
Fine,
again.
fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do
Thank you
mind
very
if I
much.
skip to my other agenda while I'm right here? This would be the, you see it, Twyla?
Yes,
Yep.
the 2020-208, the Public Works one-ton truck bid.
Get that out of the way. I came to council on the last meeting. We solicited for bids. We actually sent it out to almost a dozen companies. We had 4 that responded. And from the 4, Bessie Motors came back with the best bid and they were in second place. I think there was only like under $80 that separated the two. But for $48,298, you're getting a brand new Dodge Ram 3500, 4-wheel drive, gas motor, with the plow, a V plow, and an aluminum dump rack body. The other thing too, it comes with a 5-year, 100,000-mile powertrain, where most of the other companies were 3-year, 36,000 miles. So they're offering a lot better warranty program. I have no issues. I have no brand that's, I'm a favorite of, as long as the truck's does what we gotta have it do. I would say we award the bid to Bessie Motors. They're the ones that came in with the lowest bid. Everything else, as far as the other 3 trucks were concerned, everybody's going to Messer for the body and for the plow. So all those were the exact same numbers. So basically, the only thing different was the amount of money for the cab and chassis.
Make a motion for discussion.
I'll take the motion. Second for that?
Second.
I got the second over there with Don. Go ahead.
They're all using Messer, but man, there was like a $5,000 difference between some of the bodies, right? I mean, from the
Well,
bids.
what happened was some of the bodies came back with the difference of the hoist was not included, and a lot of the companies came back and said Messer messed up, Messer messed up, get it?
Yeah.
And they basically came back and said, we made a mistake. We forgot to put the hoist. We just had it just as a fixed body, and I wanted a dumping body. So they came back and added that onto everybody's proposal. So there was like over a $4,000 add-on. I think it was $4,400.
So everybody's bid is now
Everybody
equalized?
is on the same page now.
Everybody's
yes.
been equalized.
Yeah.
Okay.
They still had a lot of different prices on even the bid. Even then, I'm sure it's just markup.
Oh,
is
yeah,
what it
yeah.
comes down to, right?
Yeah.
And I had 2 questions. I think Diane already mentioned those to you too. About the idea of just installing a sander on aluminum body, but that's something you probably won't use this for sanding at this point in time.
No, the stainless steel sander goes in the back of the Ford dump truck,
Yep.
the F-550. So that one goes on there. This one wouldn't have the sander in the back.
That wouldn't last very long anyways, especially with those. That's years ago. We actually kind of, when I first got on counter, they were trying to move everything away from the idea of steel and aluminum for anything that carried salt, and actually trying to get more stainless, just only because the longevity of it.
Yeah.
And the blade, you're going to be all set with the the 8.5 versus the blade, or
That was another thing we spoke about, but when I spec'd it out with a 9-foot blade, and they all quoted it at 8.5. Now, granted, they're getting it all from the same company. It's all the same price. I'm going to take out of my budget the difference to purchase the 9.5, because with a dually, you'll end up running it over if you're plowing in the V form, and you'll end up plowing it, it doesn't shoot it back far enough. So I'm going to opt to go with a 9.5, and I'll just take the extra from my my winter budget. It's not a huge difference. You're only talking maybe $600 to $800 difference. But instead of going back out, because everybody bid the same thing,
Yep, it's understandable. Yep.
and they sell a 9-footer straight blade, but I wanted a V blade because we can scoop, and it works a lot better in parking lots.
And all those guys are all set with the idea of with the 350 for that with that size blade. They should be.
Yep. Yeah. I have one on my 3/4 ton, and I have a diesel, and it's a 9.5-footer.
Yep.
So with a 1 ton, it should be even better.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think it's a difference. I mean, same thing with the Ford, Chevy, or Dodge. They all run. They're good. If they all break, they're no
That's
good.
it.
So.
And like Diane said, everybody put the same time and effort in it. I have no real preference. Ford, Dodge, Chevy, they all do the job they're supposed to do, so I don't really care.
What's the lead time?
I can get this truck in 120 days. It says 120 to 150 days. The other people were, 6 to 9 months?
Oh, okay.
Any other questions, Randy? I
I
had
just
one. The original amount that we approved for this, I believe, was what, 53 grand from the
Yeah,
fund
so
balance
I came in
allocation?
way under. Yep.
Yeah, so the listening dot above your head, it's within the means of what we actually asked for.
And it's not a $70,000 truck.
Right.
Guarantee you that.
You told the story first. I love it. You already addressed it several times. The fact is you had no preference in Lewiston. We just look at what's actually coming into the fleet for parts and inventory and that type of stuff for that piece. It doesn't seem to play, and we don't have anywhere near the number of pieces that Lewiston has to keep in play, even for pickups. So I have no issue with that.
And may I add one more thing?
Please.
And I assume that you're going to undercoat this with your system before you actually put it out on the road anyways, right? You had actually mentioned that you were starting to undercoat all your fleet, pretty much?
Yep, we've, all my fleet is just about done now. As soon as we get the garage cleaned, I'm gonna have the mechanics go right through and give the place a real good cleaning, and then I'm gonna start taking in the other department's vehicles.
Yeah, just important on something like this, because definitely the warranty's great, but the idea of the road and what, it's only out in the worst conditions, so it's definitely gets abused.
Service doesn't have to be done in South Paris, right? It's any Dodge dealer.
Any Dodge dealer, that's correct. But Bessie's also did say that if there was any recalls or anything, they'll bring us a loaner. I'm like, well, you don't want us to have a loaner.
I don't know what this is.
What are you thinking? I'm opening it right. I'm going to take you up on that because you said it, but you
well, I probably would, but I'm just like, you don't want us to have a loaner. Just get my guys a ride back. That's all.
Right. No other questions? All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Yep. Where we are. Next item, Twyla.
Order
He'll rejoin us.
2020-207, the waiver of foreclosure. So I've identified 6 properties that I'd like to have council authorize a waiver of foreclosure so that we don't foreclose on these. And this statute is really geared to those properties that the town does not want to take ownership of during the foreclosure process, and mainly because of environmental issues on these. These are the same properties that we went through the waiver of foreclosure last year.
I was going to say that it was on, I remember seeing the list before. The question that I had, is there any other potential pending DEP action on those properties that we now have to deal with that flip side coming out publicly, like the dam?
No.
That's nothing I could think of either, too. So we clearly don't want any involvement associated with this because we've made several decisions over the past couple of years.
I make a motion.
Yes. All in favor? Please let that one reflect 7-0. We'll get his yay when he comes back. Next item, Twyla.
Is Order 2020-209 to set the public hearing for the special entertainment permits for the Slovak Club and the American Legion.
I make a
Post
motion.
158. Well, we needed to ask you when your next meeting is. If you're not planning to meet next week, which is a regular scheduled meeting on the 15th, and you plan to meet only once this month, then we would recommend you set the public hearing for January 5th.
I make a motion that we set the public hearing for January 5th. If it doesn't mess up, it won't mess up either one of their operations, right?
The town manager can authorize a temporary permit be given.
Okay, with that being said, I make that motion.
All in favor?
Order passed, 6-0.
We'll catch up with Mr. That's 7. We'll give Mr. Albert on that one, too.
Who was the one that seconded it? Oh, thank you.
Cassie did. I was going to say it was on that side.
Next is Order 2020-210.
You owe her 2 votes for the public record.
Okay.
We just voted to not tax acquire the properties and the special permits for Slovak and Coombs
I
Mountain.
would have been a yes for both of those.
Okay.
Thank you. We're
Would have
current.
been. I am a yes for both of those.
So the next one is Order 2020-210, the policy on the treasurer's disbursement warrants for the school employee wages and benefits, and the policy on the treasurer's disbursement warrants for the municipal employees' wages, benefits, and state fees.
I make the motion.
I need a second.
I'll second for discussion.
Yeah, just say, just brief description, don't have to be too lengthy.
Yeah, these are the annual policies that we have to do to disperse warrants. Nothing's changed in the policies. It authorizes the council to, on the school payroll, municipal payroll, and the state payables, you authorize just one signature to sign on those warrants for the council part. And then on all of the accounts payable, we have to have 4 signatures, and we have to adopt these policies every single year. And the only thing that would change from year to year would be the name of the counselors in the policy, and so there's no different from last year, but we still have to go through that process every year.
That said, with no meetings through the rest of the year, I would just ask that when you guys see those emails or texts coming from Diane, please make that case. I know that we periodically, whoever's here, we're down to 2 signatures, 1 signature, those kind of things, sharing that with the group so we can make sure that there's no gap in getting those out the door, that would be very helpful.
I can usually cover all of one.
Yeah, and the single signature, I know Don does an excellent job associated with that. It's the 4, it's just the updates to make sure that we're getting those signed in a timely manner to get them where they need to be. Thank you. I have a motion and a second, did I? All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next.
Order 2020-211, council working rules.
Don updated these last year as one of his first duties on the council. If we're not seeing anything, I would make the motion that we approve them as presented last year for consideration for this year.
A motion for discussion.
Please. In a second.
I'll second.
I think they're working fine the way they are. Does anything need to be added into it, just the way if we were had a situation where we would have to do a virtual meeting? I mean, a lot of that was never discussed in our original meeting rules at all. I know we actually we did that once or twice this year. Not saying that we'll do it again, but
Yep.
is there anything in our meeting rules that needs to be adapted for that take effect? I mean, I assume the chair can actually call for that to happen at any time. I mean, does that have to be in a written rule at all, as far as for?
Don, can you look at that and just maybe weigh into the council, because you know you took the last stab at it associated with that. We don't have to give us an answer tonight, but in the form of councilor communications, I've heard from at least a couple of you guys since our last meeting, and to your point, councilor, the fact that I think reality would be, if we're not meeting until January, we're covered. The fact is, if things do not improve, we probably ought to consider what it would mean to go back to virtual again. In that regard, is the fact that, kind of like pictures tonight, I want to make sure that we're making conscious decisions to actually not promote worst possible scenarios for people's health and safety with winter, because winter is enough coming on associated with that. So I think just being conscious of it.
Are you looking into permanently changing the rules for something like the virtual?
He's asking if there needs to be an update to be able to cover.
Because I know that unless we're in this emergency management situation, we don't have the authority to do that.
Is that still, is that prolonged? I mean, I'm not sure how long.
It's been extended.
As long as we're covered under the federal, we're good.
Yeah.
Right, as long as she calls it an emergency, which she keeps extending it every single month, then we're good.
But if that expires at any point this year, then we can't do with that.
But really, it's still, I mean, as long as the council, I guess as long as the council's, to me, it's really up to the chair. If the chair actually feels that the situation is that we need to go virtual, then that's, as long as our rules allow for that to happen, I think that's actually, I'm okay with it.
Well, we're covered by that now.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And one of the things that we just did it tonight, and the fact is, and we had 2 people introduced in the social, one here and one in this, in that regard. One of the key points that I want all of you and the public to understand is that the safety is the primary here. In that regard, is we're taking these steps to be able to make sure that everything is taken care of to keep business moving, and at the same time, personal health and safety comes to the forefront. That said, where I'm concerned is I want to make sure through these proceedings that the public still feels that they have an input piece. You know, the public comment section where we haven't had anybody of recent, I don't know if unless I'm extremely irate that I would want to come out to be able to do it either too, but I don't want that assumption to be ruling the day either, because our strength is actually in the information that we actually make our decisions on.
And again, I'm perfectly fine with the rules are the way they are, as long as we actually just have some type of guidance that we will know by a certain day prior to a meeting that we're going to be doing it virtual versus live. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure that's something that would come from the chair. So.
Yeah, no, by all means, the fact that I think that January meeting, that's probably where I'm landing, because I'm looking at this one is the fact that, to your point, is we probably should have been thinking of this in our November meeting to be looking at tonight's meeting So I would put that out there now to be looking at potentially a virtual if need be, if things don't improve after the first of the year.
May I?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see how it will before then. I think that we get to the 20, I think she's got it through the 23rd of this month or the 30th, I can't remember which day. But I don't see her doing anything other than extending again for at least another 30 days. So I think it's probably good thought to just, why don't we call it a virtual until we hear different or see different? Because that way we can prepare now. All of us have to set up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of us are old hat at Zoom in some way or another, dealing with things like that. So whatever the method we're going to choose to use, we can get it out there and be ready for it, have the invites out, maybe even run a kind of a quick test to make sure everybody's on the same page and it all goes smoothly. So night of, we don't have any surprises.
One of the other discussions that we took, Twyla, this comes to you. Anything that can be packaged in that consent agenda, use it. Because that actually made it a lot easier and expeditable.
It's ironic that this virtual meeting stuff was one of my goals when I became a counselor. And I was told that the state was the ones that controlled it, so I
Agreed.
called our representative and I was told it is never going to happen. And so going forward, if we ever get out of an emergency, it might then become an option. I don't know that, but I'm sure the legislature would have to weigh in.
Okay.
I can't imagine that they wouldn't give that sort of, there's no downside to having virtual. I think we've proven that time and time again in this last 10 months. So.
Anybody seeing a downside to going virtual for the January meeting, the first one? Actually, let's go one step further. Both January meetings to be revisit.
I was going to ask you, you might as well do the whole month of January, then reevaluate it.
Reevaluate at that January meeting for the February timeframe. Yeah.
I know Brett will appreciate waiting at his own house in January versus waiting here for us out in the wings. Thank you for being patient, sir.
Okay. Next item, Twyla.
All right, so you really don't need a motion for the council working rules, correct? So we just
No.
withdraw it?
Thank you.
Seeing no objection, we'll withdraw that motion. Next is Order 2020-212, the low-risk solar power options to reduce energy costs.
Good evening, everybody. Brett Richardson, Economic and Community Development Director. This first item we'll talk about tonight is good news. I think we have a chance to save some money here without much risk to the town. There's a lot of solar generation coming online, and before it comes online, the investors are looking to sell the supply to willing buyers. And so we have an opportunity through that mechanism and energy credits to sign up with a couple of vendors. The first is NextAmp. It's a great opportunity to save 15% off of the energy bill. And for folks listening at home tonight, that's also available to residents. So if you're a business, municipality, or resident, you can sign up with NextAmp. You provide a utility bill, they gauge where you're at, and then you have a relationship going forward through credits that allows you to save 15%. So we're asking for a recommendation tonight to sign up for that. We would be able to actually start to accrue those savings next summer, early fall, when a new array comes online. So they're filling that capacity about 9 months in advance. The second one builds on the first. It doesn't compete. They're not mutually exclusive. They're both low-risk options, and that is a company out of Connecticut called Titan Energy. They're a consultant, and they will run an RFP on our behalf. They've got connections with the generators, and they will then bring back the responses to that bid to the town for us to evaluate and make a decision. If we don't want to move forward, we don't need to. If we do, the particulars of that deal will be spelled out in a credit agreement with the generator. So we still, even though Titan will run the RFP on our behalf at no cost to the town, we will be the ultimate decider. And Titan gets paid if they give us a good deal. So they sort of eat what they catch on our behalf. So that's what we're asking tonight. They're low risk, no upfront capital, no equipment on town-owned property, simply taking advantage of renewable energy credits that are available.
May I make a motion for discussion?
Can I ask before would it be best to consider these as separate items, or are you okay with actually?
That was my question. Was the first one, is that a local array? The first option that you had mentioned, solar array, was that a local?
Statewide. Yeah,
okay.
next amp. Yeah, they could be separate, they could be together.
Okay.
And I guess one last point that I would make just for consideration would be that more of these opportunities will come online, and that it might be worthwhile to consider setting aside savings to invest in energy efficiency going forward, whether that's weatherization to reduce costs or to have the capital, if the town desires to make investments to leverage to get better savings in the future.
So you recommended taking the 15% savings and banking it for improvements? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have the 15% savings, and we could opt out of that at any time. If Titan delivers a better deal, then we could cancel with NextAmp and pivot over to Titan. So there's all kinds of flexibility here. We're not locking ourselves into any deals. Basically, these folks will do the work on our behalf, and we can accrue the savings.
No commitment of resources of any type from the town, correct?
Correct. We would review the bids from Titan.
So
Other than that, we share a bill with NextAmp, and then we start, getting the savings in July or August.
So can we entertain a motion for Nexamp Communities Solar by itself, and then consider the second?
I would like to consider them the same. I'd like the motion for the same, both
Yeah,
of them.
to me, I see this no different than Diane going out yearly and looking for better deals as far as when it comes to power and energy. So, to me, if whatever one of these options are, I mean, I would leave that up to either Brett or Diane to actually look into it and determine what's the best avenue and cost savings. I mean, I guess besides the idea of the council giving approval to go out and look, I mean, I don't think it's really us to pick and choose.
Well, the question I have with Titan Energy then is the fact that I can probably come up with 3 or 4 other companies that are doing exactly the same model that they're doing. They will actually run an RFP on our behalf, and actually they get paid associated with it. What I don't want to actually come back on us is that being pointed out, that how did we end up with an exclusive on Titan when other competitors are doing exactly the same thing? That's the piece that I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
I guess in response to that, I think the idea here is speed, and that some of this capacity is being gobbled up. Titan, Diane shared the utility bills with Titan. They evaluated it and thought that under the right terms we could get a 20 to 25% cost savings. So we could do, which we've talked about in previous meetings, an RFQ or something like that to go through that process. I think in weighing the options, I'm not convinced that we'll get a better deal doing that, and that it'll cost us a couple months to do so. So it's more, and actually there's nothing here that would prevent us from having somebody else run a bid on our behalf.
No, by all means.
Yeah.
And by the way, I like your answer.
Anyway, if I'm allowed, I'd like to make that motion.
Accept both?
Pardon me?
Accept both as presented?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any other questions of Brett on these 2 topics then, folks?
I just wanted to make a comment that I engaged in one of those 15% contracts. I don't think it's with Nexamp, it's a different company, but it's it's a fairly local solar that they're investing in. This one in particular that I'm doing is in Auburn and hasn't been built. Another opportunity, maybe it's a Nexamp, I don't know, but the planned solar facility on top of Rickers Farm is one of them that offers that. It belongs to one that offers that 15%. So that's what we're talking about. It's fairly local, but not necessarily right in town.
Any other questions of Brett? All in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Saving money, saving the world. What else can you ask for, right?
That's right.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-213, Lisbon Falls Village Area Wayfinding Signage.
Excellent.
It's supposed to be Lisbon Village, or both, Lisbon Falls and Lisbon Village?
This particular is for Lisbon Falls.
Okay.
So, since I've been in Lisbon, parking has been a hot topic. It's been something that people discuss on a regular basis downtown and feel passionately about. And we had a meeting on the 20th of September, to introduce the Maine Community Foundation funded entrepreneurship initiative, and then also to have an open community dialogue around the Main Street closure. And parking came up as a big issue there as well. And so we followed up with a survey of the Main Street businesses, and lo and behold, there's a sense that there's not enough parking, and also that in addition to a lack of adequate parking, there's inadequate wayfinding signage to locate that parking. So if you were a visitor to Lisbon and didn't know where your favorite spots were that nobody else competed for, you might drive around for a while and have a hard time finding a spot. And so Diane and Randy, Public Works Director, they've been working over the last couple of years to increase the parking supply. So there's plans to bring some new spaces, 45 or so in 3 different locations, online as soon as possible, hopefully next summer, but it's in the works. And so to leverage that investment and to build on that, we're asking for a small allotment of downtown TIF funds to create attractive, cohesive signage that will help folks find existing parking, and then also, as you pass by the village area on 196, to invite folks to pull over and visit, access the parking, and then visit the businesses and dine and see all that we have to offer. So this is an ask to put that signage in place. I think we've got some good locations mapped out, largely based or consistent with the detour signage as well. So that as you came from either Topsom or Lewiston and passed through, you would see nice branded cohesive visuals asking you to come in and visit, and then also directing to where you could park and walk to destinations.
I make a motion?
I need a second.
Second.
I got the first and I got the second. Do you have a question?
I think this is awesome use of the downtown TIF money. It does just what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to help local businesses and actually help people come in, and I think it's only can be expanded on as time goes on. So
definitely.
Brett, your solicitation for feedback on what that ultimate design is, what do you envision for getting that from the public?
I think what we'll do is very shortly, on the 17th of December, we're going to have a meeting to wrap up the planning phase of that Maine Community Foundation Entrepreneurship Initiative. So I think what we'll do is we'll let folks know that this is happening. I don't think it'll be a surprise. And some of that feedback from that meeting on the 28th and other conversations around Moxie Plaza and the Main Street closure, this is a topic that came up. And so I think local businesses in particular will be a key audience there, and I think they're waiting for this and will be ready to weigh in. We've got a local artist who's pretty accomplished, and he's worked for some big companies and done design work, who has done some mock-ups for art that would go along with the hotspots, the Wi-Fi hotspots. And so I think what we'll do, he's working pro bono for us, and he's got 2 pretty solid concepts. I think we'll get a third that are a nice way to promote Lisbon, a unique brand identity, and we'll use those as 3 different options to share with the business community and the residents as well, and get feedback there, and then fine-tune the design that fits best with what the community would like to see. And that's what we'll move forward with.
good stuff.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
on the TIF funds, we have more than enough left in the Warumble Mill fencing project, because we ended up spending a little over 5,000 when we originally had, I think it was 18,000. So you don't have to allocate additional funds, but you can just reallocate the funds to this project.
Okay, good. And that final design would come here before anything goes up, Brett?
Correct.
Okay. My last question, because it was pointed out, the village area and the fact that Lisbon Falls versus Lisbon, it's still both. Is there a need for signage on this side that we might want to consider putting up at the same time to not hear that argument again, that
Yeah,
we're all
I think
putting
that's
energy into one side of town?
Yeah, that's a good point. We can definitely do that. I padded the budget just a little bit, so I think there's room for a couple signs that could be at the corner to invite folks in, and we would definitely use a design that would be used townwide. It would fit townwide, so the aesthetics would be good, and I think it would be, broadly supported.
How much is it per sign that you had in your original working budget on a per sign?
I'd have to look at it for the signs. 12 signs that range from 2.5 by 2 to 4 by 4. I think that was about $2,100.
Okay.
So there's an extra $1,100 there. We'll need posts, which are $30 a piece. So to do a couple signs down at the Village Street end of town, I think we're looking at.
Does $4,000 go further? I'm asking.
Yeah, that would help. Sure.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment on the motion by the first and the second for that to increase that amount to $4,000?
So amended.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Okay. And any other questions? Yes, sir.
On this end of town, highlighting Beaver Park, highlighting Graziano Park, things like that.
Yep.
And the parking area.
Yep.
There's also a municipal parking lot behind the fire station that might be of use to advertising a little.
Yep. It's a good
Especially if nothing else in that area on a winter parking ban.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact is letting the general public know that it's there for that walkability for those folks that are actually right there in that stretch with the apartments for sure.
Yep.
I just think it's a perfect example to try to not actually keep making the same mistake in dividing our two downtowns against each other.
I just wanted to say that out of that meeting on the 28th, I think this is a real turnaround, quick turnaround, because most people don't think of government turnarounds as quick at any time. So to think at the end of September, this is the conversation, and here we are in December, first part of it, getting to the point to be able to allot the monies for the signage to then go back to those business owners and say, you had asked us to get signage to identify this as business parking only, or so that way you wouldn't see those spaces get clogged up, where it may have been a much more difficult or more of a pain point when Moxie Plaza was in place. Now that it's gone, it'll show that commitment and that we're listening, trying to help them so that they can get what they need to remain successful when Moxie Plaza or other things that come along to try to promote business in a different way here, they don't feel like they're left behind in that sense.
Definitely. I think, going back to the chair's question about the design, I think we would have a meeting, hopefully in person, but if we need to, we'll do it remotely towards the end of January, and that'll be a couple-part conversation. That'll be what's the preferred design, but also one of the outcomes from that meeting on the 28th was, and it was reflected in the survey responses as well, is there's a desire among the businesses there to collaborate and to at least informally denote certain areas for employee parking that would leave prime parking closer to the businesses available for customers. And that would be the other part of that conversation, would be for those folks to have it amongst themselves. We can facilitate it. But so we'll come out, hopefully by early February, we'll have good branded signage in the works, and we'll have some consensus among the downtown businesses about how they can work together to mitigate the concerns.
May I add one more thing to that?
Sure.
It's included but not included, because shortly after that meeting, there was actually definitely seen to be a change in the way some of the parking was done. Some of the facilities, some people were facilitating the idea on the Rumble site. I mean, there'd be sometimes 10 to 12 cars parked there, and I assume most of those were employees of businesses. Do you know, Diane, if we have any intention to plow that area this winter so that can remain?
He's gonna, that area where people are parking right now,
Yep.
he is gonna do that.
Okay, it's just a question. I
Done
wasn't sure.
today, but yeah, we talked about that this morning.
Because it's interesting. Meetings like that do make a difference, because there was really a culture change, not a culture change, but a change in thought process of smart parking, and I'd like to see that continue. So
definitely.
To that point, the signage that's there, is there any signage that supports that walk across right now for a safe pass?
Pedestrian?
Yeah.
You have the crosswalk.
I know it's a DOT thing, and I know eventually they're going to get there and do it. I'm just wondering if while we're here, if it's not a bad idea to, we don't have to.
I don't know if you actually want to get into the liability on a DOT topic either, too.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, I think that's a broad discussion. I think that's something we have, maybe in the spring, if we get to the winter, to actually bring DOT in and actually just start leveraging some. I think Brett has the ear, right, from other discussions, so I think they're willing partners. It's just basically we got to get together and make that plan, right?
Well, yeah, and to that point, really the next item that we'll talk about is the Warumbo redevelopment. And one of the goals to have a visioning process wrapped up by early spring is that syncs up with the next round of grants. And so, ideally, we could go to CDBG, for example, and ask for funding to redo that crosswalk and do it in a really nice way, and be able to say, the community, here's the consensus, here's the plan, we all agree, we want to redevelop this in a certain way. To do that safely, we need to have safe pedestrian crossing. We'll put a match up, please give us the funding to make this happen. So we're building towards
Good.
that.
Good
point.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions, topic? All in favor?
So your amendment vote is
Four.
7-0,
Yes.
and then your main motion as amended, that vote,
Yes.
7-0? All right.
Thank you, Twyla. Next item?
Order 2020-214, the Arumbo redevelopment site plan, concept development, and zoning review.
All right. Well, this is some more good news, I think. For those who've been following along, last time we had this discussion, Jay Rate and Little River Surveying did an elevation study to understand exactly where the floodplain was at Warumbo, and then also what the gap was between the base flood elevation and how much ground would need to be added to bring certain sections of that site up above the base flood elevation, and thereby eliminating certain design considerations, as well as probably additional flood insurance. And so pretty good results there. That triggered an additional question, which is the location of the floodway. The local planning board has the authority to grant fill permits in the floodplain, but not in the floodway. If you think about the floodplain as where the water spreads after it leaves its banks, the floodway is the actual channel of the river. So you could put flood or fill in the floodplain if it's done in a well-engineered way. You can't do anything in the floodway because you'll disperse water elsewhere, and it's just not a sound practice. And so the whole Androscoggin River has the floodway mapped by FEMA, except for the portion in front of the Warumbo site. So that could mean two different things. That could mean that there is no floodway denoted there, or it could mean that we need to pay an engineer to do a study to determine where the floodway is at. So we got some good news from FEMA. We reached out. Myself, I talked to a field rep from FEMA, and then we verified the findings by having Mandy Oliver talk to a different field agent with the same questions to make sure that we were getting the same answer from two different field agents, and we did. And that is that the lack of a floodway there means that FEMA doesn't realize a floodway is there. They don't count that as a floodway, which means that the local planning board authority will be recognized by FEMA. And if the local planning board grants a fill permit, that FEMA will honor that, and then following that, they'll grant a letter of map amendment with fill, which means by amending the map, we're taking that area out of the floodplain. We're eliminating certain design considerations, and we're eliminating the need for flood insurance. So that's really good news. We do not need to do a study, and we have the local authority, as long as it's well engineered, to do what we would like to do. So that, in many ways, sort of clears the path forward based on previous public input about what we'd like to see at Warumbo, which includes a mix of tasteful development that extends Main Street down, that provides parking, and that reserves green space along the river for the community to enjoy. And so this memo summarizes that and proposes two next steps, which is, one, to go to the planning board to seek a permit for the fill. We wouldn't necessarily put the fill in ourselves, but we would have cleared that hurdle and erased that barrier for a private sector developer that we wanted to work with. They would know that those pieces were in place. They wouldn't have to jump through those hurdles. Those uncertainties would be gone, and they would know what they were getting. So that's a pretty cost-effective approach. Mandy can do that fill permit for $1,500 or so, which will allow us to then go through a planning board site plan review to get that approval and attach that to the property going forward. The second request is to then have some architectural renderings done. I think and for good reason, there's strong opinions about what should happen at Warumbo, and there's different concerns and goals. And I think really, those are view sheds. People want to see the river. We could use some development down there that's tasteful and that complements the site. And people want to have green space to be able to enjoy. I'm pretty confident that we can accomplish all those with good design. And I think getting architectural renderings done will help us achieve that, but it'll also help achieve some consensus among the community, so that this is a well-paced, thoughtful approach that gets everybody's input involved, and then we make a good decision. And I think with design and the right renderings, we can have much of all those needs met, and then some. So this is an exciting time, and asking for roughly $7,500. We've already authorized $1,500 earlier in the year as we started this process for the needs as they arose. This is a good need, and we can match that $7,500 with funding from the Maine Community Foundation Entrepreneur Initiative Grant. So we got some other funding coming in to do this.
I just wanted to say that this is a topic that's been approached numerous times by the LDC, and we've had informal drawings, and we've had some really conceptual things, but we need to get more formal with it, and so the LDC strongly endorses doing this.
I make a motion for discussion.
Second?
Second.
The, Brett, with the 7,500 as far as, that's more than just conceptual, that's actually more of a more the scale layout of the property, right?
Yep.
I guess my question is, if we're going to spend the money to do that, will it actually encompass some of the tools we'll need if we go for a grant that we can use a layout for design purpose for? I mean, I just like it to be more than just a picture or something that we hang on a wall that we actually use as a rendering, but actually a tool that actually shows proper layout. Utilities maybe where they would actually have to come from. So we can use it as more of a ongoing design, and if we go for a grant, that we can actually use these as a tool to move forward with the grant. That's all. So
yeah,
I've seen a lot of different renderings from different projects we've done, and sometimes you can spend a lot of money for just conceptual. That's really not so to speak to the point where you can use it for trying to figure out what the utilities layout would be of the property and stuff. So I'm not sure how much we'll get for that.
It's a great point, and I think one of the conversations that we've had, and we've had it internally at the staff level and at the LDC the other night, is to exactly what you're speaking to. And I think ultimately we're going to need to do a zoning amendment on this site as well, and by having the drawings to reference to scale, that's the Dean Woolley did a great job with the conceptual stuff, and hats off to Dean. At this point, we really do need it to scale, because that can inform zoning. We can look at that, whatever the rendering is that folks want to see, and extrapolate that, what kind of zoning changes would need to happen at that site to facilitate that. So you're right on with that. And then, there's another opportunity, to your point, about utilities and other things. If we're going to the planning board for a site plan review, we have an opportunity to maximize that and perhaps permit certain things where we want them to be. And it's another way to get at striking that balance between giving the private sector the freedom to do what they want to do and make it attractive that way, but also to make sure that the town gets what they want. And so there's a couple ways to do that. There's zoning, and then there's also, we could approve almost a site plan, I think, that we could sell as part of, if you want to come in, you could start building within a month or two. Just, give us your architecture. We've already got the site plan approval. The utilities will go here. We put the Northern Border Regional Commission grant. That was really to put those utilities in. We'll go back to them and we'll make the same ask. We'll be further along this time. So I think that's a conversation that we can have, and would love to actually lead a planning board workshop on that, and to see how far we can push that envelope to get that site plan review as productive as possible and as further along as possible, so that somebody who was looking to buy it understood what they were getting, and that they can move quickly if they wanted to.
So just to go back, it would be to scale, but also going back to Norn's point earlier, will it show the idea of what we'd like to see as far as for sidewalks and crosswalks? Oh, that's so when we do meet with DOT, we can say it'd just be nice to have a tool that we actually have everything laid out. So, ideally this would be the crosswalk, and all this stuff would go away, and this is where the lighting would be, and so we can, if we're going to spend the money, make sure it's a tool that we can use on all different fronts. That's all.
Definitely.
When we go back before the public with several options, they should reflect what was done in that, what I want to say, the research tools that we used before. But they also can be used as sales tools for developers. And so they need to be significantly done. But I would, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I want to say that a site plan approval should be very, very specific. I don't think we want to tie somebody down to a specific site plan approval. I think we want to speed things up for them and make it easy for them. But I've done some research with the site plan thing, and as far as utilities go, if we want to stub utilities or indicate the utilities are stubbed to the property, that's fine. Otherwise, we need to develop something of a subdivision, and I don't think we want to go that far.
I think Brett's more
but we
looking
can
for the word
talk about that.
shovel-ready, right? You just like to have the lot
Shovel-ready.
shovel-ready.
I know you want to make it as convenient as possible.
I'm not sure where that line's at yet, but, if we can push that up as far to that line as possible, and we'll know where the natural place is to stop. But it's a good point, Don. That's a good point. But yeah, we're looking to basically make this as smooth as possible, and if an interested buyer knows exactly what they're going to get.
Any other questions of the director on this? I had just the one, and you addressed most of it, Brett, and the fact that I was originally seeing this and concerned for investing in another rendering, but hearing the marketability for the variety of fronts, I would agree with Don that I would only go up to a certain point, that we're investing in a baseline on a site plan for what somebody could do. They have the vision to help you be able to market the property. That's the intent, is the fact that we're not holding anybody's hand to the fire associated with what they need to do there, but also realizing that we most likely coming out of this is very rarely does an architect actually give you the medium for all the prints and everything that you actually are purchasing. It's theirs. So we might not be able to get it to that other individual with that intent for if they choose to work with us. But I think it's a great avenue to pursue for the amount here for feedback to take it to the next level, which we've committed to for public input to be able to move this project forward. Anything else? All in favor?
Order 7-0. Passed.
Next item, Twyla?
The next item is the 2020 CDBG
Thank you, Brett.
Housing Assistance Program funding and the 2020 CDBG Housing Grant Resolution. So did you want to go to executive session at this moment?
If it gets breaded here any sooner, then if we're going to be coming back, let's do so to make that easier.
All right, let's do that. So I'll need a motion.
Make the motion to go into executive session.
Second on that, please?
Do we actually have to list, are we going in for multiple reasons at this
Yes,
point, or
we
just
are.
this one?
Yep.
So we got to list the
The
217,
reasons for.
218, 219, and 2020 order?
Which is MRSA Section 405, 6A Personnel Matters, 6C Economic Development, 6D Labor Negotiations, and 6E Consultations with Legal.
That's what I meant.
And we will be coming out
And
for further discussion,
We'll
correct?
take them out of order so Brett can get out of the executive session and then rejoin us for something if we're coming back. I'm assuming there will be a vote, at least. Thank
All
you.
those in favor? Order passed, 7-0.
Which we're staying right here, we're just turning lights off?
Right. As soon as she goes dark with the camera.
All right, just one moment. Yes.
Anybody needs to hit the head, go for it.
I'm not going to get stroll just get rid of the mask for a second so I can breathe.
Grizzly man beard you got going, dude.
Yeah, right? That's it.